Hello and welcome to this basics episode on the accident at Montparnasse. One of the most iconic of all 19th century railway photographs is that of Locomotive 120721 of the Chemin de Fer d'Est on its nose in a Parisian street. But what happened on that day in October 1895? Locomotive 120721 was one of a batch of 36 locomotives built for the Chemin de Fer d'Ouest to pull fast express passenger trains between Paris, Le Mans, Brest, Caen and Cherbourg in 1877. The design for these handsome 120s, or in white notation 240s, can be traced back to 1862, and these designs are based on the thinking of the French locomotive engineer Camille Polonceau, who, in reverse of British practice at the time, which was to use outside cylinders and inside valve gear, decided to adopt inside cylinders and outside valve gear, which meant that it was far easier to access for maintenance and repair. Taking his inspiration from Thomas Russell Crampton, Polonceau advocated the use of large steam chests and large curved main sting pipes and exhaust pipes to create a free-running engine with little back pressure in the cylinders. The use of outside valve chests, however, meant that he had to use external sting pipes and exhaust pipes, and these were heavily insulated to prevent any heat loss. Polonceau, like Crampton, also advocated the use of an external regulator for ease of maintenance and lubrication. These large locomotives for the Chemin de Fer d'Ouest had a steam dome mounted on the front ring of the boiler and a small cylindrical sandbox mounted midway along. In total, 145 of these handsome 240s were built, many of them lasting into the 20th century. But getting back to the 22nd of October 1895. Locomotive 721 was rostered to work the express from Granville on the Normandy coast to Paris, a distance of 170 miles. The train, carrying 131 passengers, had departed on time at 08:45, but it was running late. In an attempt to make up lost time, the crew pushed their engine flat out, and on the approach to Paris, the train was running far too fast. On its final run in to the Gare Montparnasse in Paris at 1600, it was running at approximately 60 km per hour, or 40 miles per hour. The train smashed through the buffer stops on platform 6, crashed across the 30-metre wide concourse, scattering passengers all over the place, before finally bashing its way through the 60cm thick wall of the station and crashing 10 metres into the street below. Amazingly, none of the passenger carriages were damaged and no passengers were killed. The only victim of the accident was a 39-year-old Marie-Augustine Aguillard, who had been standing in for her husband, a newspaper vendor, while he went to collect the evening newspapers. She was killed in her kiosk by falling masonry. The driver, fireman, 2 guards, 2 passengers and a passerby in the street were injured. The driver, Guillaume-Marie Pellerin, and fireman Garnier, and the conductor-chef, we might call him the head guard in English, Albert Mariette, were brought before the French courts for causing the death of Madame Aguillard. They were sentenced on the 31st of March 1896, with Pellerin being given 2 months in prison and a paltry fine of 50 francs. Conductor-chef Mariette was fined 25 francs for failing to apply the handbrakes because he had been too busy filling in paperwork. So what had gone so terribly wrong with the brakes? The French railways had, from 1850, mandated that every train and every locomotive be fitted with a brake. However, before the advent of continuous automatic braking, this meant handbrakes manned by a brakesman had to be used. And for the railway companies, that meant additional expense not just in brake equipment, but in men's wages. A commission established in France in 1863 noted that whilst handbrakes were sufficient for the time being, future train loads and speeds meant that a better system was needed. This French commission recommended increasing the number of braked to unbraked vehicles and trains, and ordered that the number be increased according to the maximum gradient encountered, to a maximum of 1 braked vehicle per 2 unbraked on the steepest inclines. As early as 1855, Auguste Achard of the Chemin de Fer d'Est had invented a form of electrically operated continuous brake. Heavy batteries were carried on each carriage, and every carriage was fitted with a brake, and this meant it was a continuous brake. The electric current supplied kept an electromagnet energized, and this kept the brakes released. As soon as that circuit was broken and the current stopped flowing, the brakes were applied. This meant that in case of a breakaway, the brakes would be automatically applied, meaning it was an automatic brake. The system was adopted in Belgium and was under trial in the 1860s in France and Austria. The Achard brake was certainly a step in the right direction, but it was very expensive. In light of the 1875 Newark brake trials in Britain, which had demonstrated the superiority of the Westinghouse air brake, in 1877 the Chemin de Fer had adopted the Westinghouse brake as standard. The Westinghouse brake works by using compressed air to keep the brakes off. In order to apply the brake, this air is released. Thus, if the train is separated, the sudden drop in air pressure would apply the brakes on both parts of the train. A French ministerial circular dated the 19th of December 1879 compelled all French railway companies to adopt continuous automatic brakes on all trains which ran faster than 60 km per hour, with each of the railway companies being granted 2 years to make the change. Many railway companies were, however, slow to adopt the continuous automatic brake, and a ministerial circular of 1886 forced French railway companies to adopt continuous automatic brakes by 1888 or face heavy fines. So by 1890, this process of adopting continuous automatic brakes was probably complete. At the inquest into the accident at Montparnasse, it was found that there had been a failure to apply the Westinghouse brake on number 721. But whether this was due to the failure of the locomotive or train crew to correctly assess the speed and thus the braking distance, or due to failure of the brake is not clear. However, when the Westinghouse brake was tested from the guard's van, it was found to work, suggesting the failure lay at the locomotive end. Furthermore, the regulations of the Chemin de Fer stated that its drivers were not to rely on the Westinghouse brake alone, and were also to apply the handbrakes on the engine, and the train crew to use the handbrakes on the train. With the distances and speed involved, the inquest found that the train could have been brought to a stand on the manual handbrakes alone. Furthermore, drivers and firemen in France were expressly ordered to not reverse the engine, as that was thought to lead to derailing the engine and the train behind, causing telescoping of the carriages. So at 4 p.m. on the 22nd of October 1895, something had gone horribly wrong. For the driver and fireman of 721, it must have been a terrifying experience, as their locomotive hurtled towards the buffer stops at the Gare Montparnasse. The Westinghouse brake was inoperative, and the handbrake on the engine screwed down hard, but the guard in his van was distracted by paperwork, and he failed to apply the handbrakes on the train as it headed to destruction. It all took less than 20 seconds. Unfortunately for the present-day visitor to Paris wanting to seek out where 721 came to such an undignified resting place, the original buildings of the Gare Montparnasse were demolished in 1969, but where the accident took place is highlighted in the photograph by the yellow box. So those have been the basics on the accident at Montparnasse in October 1895, when a railway locomotive landed on its nose in the middle of a busy Parisian street. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a comment below, and if you haven't already, please like, share and subscribe. If you feel able, you can also support this channel on Patreon at patreon.com/railstory for as little as a take-out cup of coffee once per month, and I'd like to thank those of you who are already doing so. And I hope to see you all next time on Rail Story.